Zipper rolls out to the right, pitches off to Taylor, and Taylor's to the 20, down to the 15, down to 10, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Touchdown, Billy Taylor! Touchdown, Billy Taylor! Billy Taylor scored a touchdown from 21 yards out. The crowd goes berserk. It was November 22nd, 1969. That they came to Barry, Michigan, all dressed in maize and blue. The words were said, the prayers were read, and everybody cried. But when they closed the coffin, there was someone else inside. Oh, they came to Barry, Michigan, but Michigan wasn't dead. And when the game was over, it was someone else instead. 11 Michigan Wolverines put on the gloves of gray, and as the organ played the victors, they laid Woody Hayes away. Under center is Wangler at the 45. He goes back. He's looking for a receiver. He throws downfield to Carter. Who's got it better than us? Nobody!
Welcome to the Michigan Man Podcast on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V Sporto Network, and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew, for Wolverine fans from coast to coast. Go Blue, and welcome to our Visitors Edition for Northwestern. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. Joining us in just a few minutes will be the Radio Hall of Fame play-by-play voice of Northwestern football, Dave Eanet. We'll also hear some of what Sharon had to say at his Monday presser. First, my view from Section 17 to get us started. It's been an up-and-down season for this young Michigan team. There has been a steep learning curve for the freshmen, including Bryce. A lot of injuries on both sides of the ball, but here we are at 7-2 with 3 games left and a lot to play for. The stretch run begins Saturday at Wrigley Field against Northwestern. Last year at this time, we came out of the second bye week and blew the Wildcats out at home. This is a much improved Northwestern team, though. On paper, we have a huge talent advantage, but the Wildcats will take advantage of any mistakes we make, and are a team Michigan must take seriously. We'll have a big Michigan crowd in attendance, so let's hope we see an effort that convinces us that this young team has made the improvements needed to finish the season playing their best football. At his Monday presser, Sharon said the bye week was important for all of the injuries that his team is dealing with.
Getting guys healthy, that was the number one goal. We want to make sure we got guys healthy. Obviously get work in, do things to get us better, but try to get guys back. We'll see what their status is as we go through the week. But feel good about it, feel good about where Cole is. We'll see where they are. We'll see where Jimmy is. We'll see where Jay Sean is. But feel like we're in a positive place with all of them, and feel like we're just keep getting more guys healthy. And then the guys that we're playing, we're getting into game 10 of the season. Everybody's got something, some bruise, nick, something. So keep those guys healthy and getting their bodies back was important for us.
Sharon talked about how Jordan Marshall was made for November football.
He's from that state that we all know, but he was the Ohio State Player of the Year, so he's played in this type of weather, been through it. But it's his mentality, it's his mentality and how he runs. He's a physical runner, and you can see it from the first game he ever played when he played down there in the rain in Tampa. And he just got better with more carries, and how he's built, how he works, how he studies the game is just he's a back that in November he's going to thrive.
Sharon said the second bye week this year seems different than last year at this time.
It feels a little bit the same, but not, because we're at a different place as far as what we were playing for. Felt really proud of the team coming off that bye week last year because they played at a really high level throughout the rest of the year, and the pride that we took in the position we were in. But it's different now. We're playing for a lot more. The urgency is at an all-time high in the program. The urgency with me, with the coaches, with the players, is at an all-time high to make sure that we're prepared. And because when the opportunity comes, it's too late to prepare, right? So you gotta go attack it right now, and I feel like our guys are doing that. So I feel like the bye weeks are just different than they were last year. This bye week and last year's bye week is different, but hopefully the outcomes are the same.
My guest today says Northwestern is capable of playing with Michigan. That's if they take advantage of red zone opportunities and don't turn the ball over. Their margin of error is very small, and they know it. Up next is the longtime radio play-by-play voice of Northwestern football, Dave Eanet. So stay with us. joining us today on the show as we get ready for a trip to, I was going to say Evanston, but not Evanston, to Wrigley Field on Saturday for a matchup with Northwestern is Dave Eanet, the radio play-by-play voice of Northwestern football. Great to have you back with us, Dave.
Good to be with you, Mike.
Well, Dave, the Wildcats made the long trip to Southern Cal on Friday night. I had a chance to see that. They lost the game, but they played a really solid first half, didn't they?
Well, they did. The game kind of swung on two critical plays in that first half. The one I think that ended up costing the Wildcats greatly was the fumble on the interception return by defensive lineman Najee Story, because at worst it looked like they were going to have the ball inside the 5-yard line of USC and a chance to take the lead. And he was stripped of the ball at the 1. It went through the back of the end zone, so that's a safety, giving the ball back to USC. And then in 3 plays, they went down and scored. So right there, that's a 14-point swing. And they were still – it's still a 1-score game well into the third quarter, and then USC was able to pull away. But yeah, I mean, they answered. USC scored on their first series, and Northwestern answered. Then USC scored again, aided by a fake punt, pass thrown by a quarterback disguised as a putter.
Yeah.
And then they went down and scored. And then, after that, the Wildcats had trouble answering, although it certainly. They did come back and tie it, but then they weren't able to take the lead.
There were some things to like in that game. I've had a chance to see Northwestern, I think 3 or 4 times play now. Been very impressed by sophomore running back Caleb Komolafe. He picked up 117 yards on the ground. He's a fun back to watch, isn't he?
He is. He's gotten better and better as the season's gone along. And the running game is pretty formidable. I mean, the numbers might not top Michigan's at this point, but if you look at where they were coming into the season, their top rusher returning from last year was Cam Porter, who is a guy who was in his 6th year and had been a 3-time captain. And he was lost in the second game of the season to a knee injury. And so all of a sudden it fell on Joseph Hyman II and Caleb Komolafe to carry the load for the running game. And Komolafe has been, as you said, he's been terrific, back-to-back 100-yard rushing games, 3 on the season. He's been able to score for them. And he's a tough guy to bring down, and he's not their fastest back. I mean, Hyman's the faster of the two, but Komolafe has surprising breakaway speed, and we've seen that in each of the last 2 games against Nebraska and USC. So, I mean, he's a guy who's getting better, and it's been a while since Northwestern has really had a running back that they could lean on, and he seems to be that guy.
Well, Dave, the Wildcats, you mentioned the numbers. They're rushing for just over, I think, 180 yards per game, which is very, very good, and averaging near, I think, 170 yards in the passing game. But both of those numbers, as you mentioned, they are a big improvement from last year, aren't they?
They are a big improvement. Last year, the Wildcats ran for 99 yards a game, and the passing numbers are pretty similar to what they were last year, but it's still been a more effective passing game, basically because they've had one quarterback, and that's Preston Stone. Last year, I think 4 or 5 different guys played quarterback, with Jack Lausch finally taking the job for good, but they had inconsistency at that position. And this year, the problem really for them is a problem they had last year, which is turnovers, which they haven't had as many, but they've seemed to have come at bad times for them. Witness the fumble by Story on Friday night, and a couple of interceptions late in the game against Nebraska thrown by Stone. So, overall, it's a better offense. They're distributing the ball to more receivers in their passing game. They still, I don't think, are where they would like to be, because they haven't scored. They haven't been able to finish drives as consistently as they would like. And the red zone number is a lot better than last year, but almost half of their scores in the red zone have been field goals. So they would like to get in the end zone a little more.
Well, you mentioned the receivers and how it's being spread out with Preston Stone at quarterback. 43 catches for Griffin Wild, and I think he came over from South Dakota, right?
Yeah, Griffin Wilde is a transfer from South Dakota State, and he's come in and made a huge impact. He played for Zach Lujan, the Northwestern's offensive coordinator, who's in his second year at Northwestern. He played for him at South Dakota State, and he's one of those guys who's got a knack for finding the soft spot in the defense, has a way of getting open. I'll tell you, Preston Stone threw a pass under duress on Friday night where he was hit as he threw, and he was going for Wilde, and it was kind of a jump ball situation, and Wilde almost came down with a tremendous acrobatic catch. I mean, he couldn't do it, but the fact that he was able to get his hands on it was kind of remarkable. Mm-hmm. And he's done things like that all year. He's been really good, and what that's done is open things up for some of the other young receivers on this team, because they are young at that position. Hayden Elegon II is a guy who's really come on, especially the second part of the season. And I think part of it is the success Willie has had has opened things up in the passing game for Elegon. Also, Drew Wagner, true sophomore, who's become more and more of a factor and caught a bunch of passes early in the game Friday night against USC. So, I think it was a big concern, the passing game, going into the season as far as the receiving core. And I think the receiving core has really been a positive for this team, also bolstered by the tight ends, because tight ends weren't heavily involved in their passing game necessarily last year, even though they had some veteran guys like Marshall Lang and Thomas Gordon. But now they've been able to get the ball to guys like Hunter Welsing and Lawson Albright more consistently.
We've mentioned Preston Stone a couple of times. Again, as I said, I've been able to see Northwestern play 3 or 4 times, and I've been impressed with him, and was again Friday night. He was 20 for 30, 1 TD pass, took care of the football, 0 interception. He is a grad student who was back up at SMU last year. For Michigan fans that haven't had a chance to see him, talk about what kind of a quarterback he is and what impact he's had on the Wildcat offense.
Well, he's stabilized the position, Mike. That's the biggest thing that Stone has done. And he was a backup last year at SMU, a team that went to the playoffs. But 2 years ago, he was their starter, and he put up big numbers for them. Entered the portal as a grad transfer. He's completed just about 60% of his passes, 11 touchdowns. The only thing that's been uncharacteristic for him has been the number of interceptions. And you have to quantify that a little bit, because of the 9 picks he's thrown, 4 of them came in the opener at Tulane. Mm-hmm. And there are a couple factors there. A, Tulane's a pretty good team, and B, it was his first game. And there could have been a little rust there. There could have been a little pressure to deliver after he comes to Northwestern, was heralded as kind of the answer at quarterback this year. And for whatever reason, he had a rough game in that opener against Tulane. And Northwestern, when they went on their 4-game winning streak, which began with the win over UCLA, which has really looked better and better in retrospect.
Yeah.
But that's where they won the first of 4 straight. And during that stretch, he did not turn the ball over, and Northwestern really cut down on the mistakes, and they were able to. In fact, I think he threw 1 interception during that 4-game span and 7 touchdown passes. And so, I think what he's done is he's brought some senior leadership to the position. I think the fact that he was voted a captain by his teammates in his first season, I think speaks a lot about him. And the fact that after that rough start at Tulane, the coach, David Braun, immediately came out and said, this is our guy. I've got his back. He had a bad game. He's done everything that we've asked him to do, and we expect him to to bounce back, and he did.
Dave, you touched on this a minute ago, but the offense is generating 21 points per game. Good numbers, 380 yards average total offense per game. I know the red zone's been an issue, but those turnovers, if they could just clean those up with that kind of production, this is really a better offense than those numbers might imply, isn't it?
Well, I think it is better, and I think a lot of that is the fact that they do have some balance, a pretty good balance between the run and pass, and thanks largely. I mean, even from the start of the season, the running game's been pretty good, but it's gotten better. You know, I think they have been able to move the ball, and that's certainly been encouraging because there were times last year where they really struggled in that area. And you know, like I say, when they've had success, you know, they won 4 straight before they've dropped these 2 games on the road to Nebraska and USC. They had won 5 out of 6, and they were looking good and being pretty productive offensively. And I think a lot of it, Mike, has been the offensive line. You know, I think this is one of the better offensive lines in the Big Ten. And it's been a while since Northwestern, even though they've had some first-round picks come off their offensive line, like Peter Skoronski and Rashawn Slater. You know, they haven't had tackle to tackle both the production and the depth from their offensive line that they've had from this group. They've managed to keep Stone upright for the most part. USC had a couple of sacks in the game on Friday night, but those were the first in a while given up by this team. And you know, I think they've been really good up front, and that's another reason that they're running the ball so effectively.
Well, over on the other side of the ball, Coach Braun is known for putting together really solid defenses, and he has in the first 2 years there at Northwestern. And a number I found interesting is that the Wildcats are only giving up 19 points per game. So overall, the defense has been pretty darn good, hasn't it?
You know, going into the USC game, those numbers got bounced up a little bit because they gave up a season high in points and the season high in yards against the Trojans. And I have to tell you, USC was impressive in that game. Maava, the quarterback, was really on target. The receivers, nobody dropped a pass all night. The receivers made unbelievable circus catches on some of his throws. And you know, so, I mean, it wasn't that the defense played that badly. I think USC's offense played really well on Friday. But that said, going into that game, they had a top 20 defense in scoring defense, total defense, passing yards allowed, you know, all those areas. Probably the only number that they might be a little disappointed about is they haven't piled up as many sacks as I think they thought they would, given the caliber of their defensive line. They have a really good line that just hasn't quite gotten home as many times. And sometimes that's also the quarterbacks you're facing too. But 13 sacks through this point in the season. But I think overall the defense has been really good through 8 games. They had only allowed just under 17 points a game, which was their third best total since the Rose Bowl team in 1995, I think, led the nation in scoring defense at about 12 points a game. So, yeah, I mean, the defense is solid. They have 2 really terrific players in Rob Fitzgerald, safety, who's their leading tackler. Is really kind of it's been a coming out party for him this year. And also Mac Uline, the middle linebacker, who is, you know, just the latest in what's a pretty long line of outstanding linebackers Northwestern's turned out. And Uline is not only one of their leading tacklers, he's second on the team. He's up there in tackles behind the line. He leads them in interceptions. He's got 4 picks. And he seems to be all over the field. He just he'll go sideline to sideline and make tackles when you think a guy's, you know, got the advantage. He's able to run him down. So, yeah, the defense is solid. I mean, and that's one thing I thought going to USC. You know, you feel like you can travel with the defense, and they didn't play a horrible game. I think USC just really made some outstanding plays.
Well, Dave, Coach Braun now in his third season at the helm there in Evanston, had a very good first year. Last year was a struggle. This year, Northwestern is once again a tough out for anyone on the schedule. Do you think he has the program in a really good place right now?
I think he does. Yeah, I mean, I think if you look at this is the second year that he's had his staff in place, that I think we saw what he was capable of in that 2023 season where he took over. He'd never been a head coach, and he'd never coached at the Power 4 level before, and at the FBS level for that matter. And Pat Fitzgerald had hired him as defensive coordinator in the spring of 23, and he came in from North Dakota State, and I think he was working on being a defensive coordinator for the first time at the FBS level, and all of a sudden the events of the summer come around, and the university decides to part ways with Fitzgerald, and there's David Braun elevated to interim head coach. And I mean, that's as tough a job, a tough a situation as you could ever walk into. I mean, his players had the opportunity to transfer if they chose to for 30 days, and only one or two did. And, he kept the team together, got them to play well, got them to win 8 games, including a bowl game over Utah. And, I think then he was, during the course of the season, he was elevated to the permanent. And when you were talking about a coach, I think you always refer to a permanent kind of in air quotes, right? But he was put in charge of the program, and I think he's done an outstanding job to get them back from last year. They've already won one more game than they did all of last year. And look, they still need another win to become bowl eligible. And they knew this was going to be really the meat of their schedule. But, they won at Penn State, which I know it's a tough year for Penn State, but I think any time you can win there, it's still a tough place to play. And that was still a team, essentially the same team that was in the playoff last year. And that was a big win for them. And I think they've had some other really nice wins. They played Oregon fairly tough most of the game. I at least kind of kept them in check. And they came back against Nebraska in Lincoln. There's, again, a costly turnover there. And they had one sequence in the fourth quarter where the defense couldn't get off the field. Otherwise, they easily could have won that game. And I've already recounted what happened Friday night at USC. So, yeah, it's a better team. I think that David has done a really good job in year 3, and we'll see where they go from here. It hasn't been the easiest thing coming in, taking over a program that hasn't had their usual home stadium either. Although they've had a unique place to play the last 2 years, most of their home games, and now they'll play their final 2 home games at Wrigley starting this week.
Well, this Saturday, of course, Michigan makes the trip to Wrigley. Usually a fan-friendly road game for Michigan over the years, but having seen Michigan all year and realizing they are really an inconsistent football team right now, I would say from a Northwestern perspective, especially if they can, clean up the turnovers on the offensive side, they have to feel pretty good about their chances on Saturday, don't they?
Well, I mean, I think they know it's going to be a tough game for them. And look, it's going to be, I would think, a pretty heavily partisan crowd for Michigan because Northwestern in this situation, those tickets were available for anyone to buy. And, let's face it, Michigan's got an awful lot of fans in this area in particular. And it's I'm sure there are going to be a lot of maize and blue in the stands at Wrigley on Saturday. That said, Northwestern's been a pretty decent road team, and they've played well at home, but I don't think they're going to be fazed necessarily by Michigan fans being in the crowd. They played pretty well against Ohio State last year at Wrigley until the Buckeyes were able to pull away later on, and there were a lot of Ohio State fans there too. Their problem, they haven't won at Wrigley Field since they started playing games there again in 2010. They had played there way back in the olden days, but they played Illinois in 2010. That was the game when they had to play in one direction because of the shorter distance behind or right against the right field bleachers. So, and now that's been remedied. And you know what? I think this team is, despite their 2 tough losses the last 2 weeks, it's a pretty confident group, and I think they're a pretty determined group. And I think they're looking at this as, hey, we're still only 1 win from going to a bowl game, and potentially 2 or 3 wins from enhancing our bowl situation. So I think they feel like they absolutely can go into this and win this game.
Well, final question before we let you get away, Dave. The all-new Ryan Field is set to open next year, and it is supposed to be beautiful from all the pictures I've seen. And that should help with recruiting and, of course, the game day experience. Would you say right now the Wildcat alums and the fan base think better days are ahead for the program?
Oh, I think absolutely. And, Mike, if you look over really since 1995, they honored that Rose Bowl team a few weeks ago at the Purdue game. And they had Gary Barnett and his staff and many of the players came back, and they were honored on the field. And ever since then, this program has really had more ups than downs, and they've gone to 16 bowl games. They've which, considering before 95 they'd only gone to 1. Of course, the rules have changed a little bit since then, but they've been a pretty competitive program. Now, last year was really the outlier for them, and including that game at Michigan where they got blown out by the Wolverines. They haven't had many of those. They haven't really had many like the one they had Friday night in Southern California. So, yeah, I mean, I think that there is a feeling, there's a lot of excitement about the stadium. It's going to be really an unbelievable facility. In fact, I'm supposed to go in and get a tour of it here in the next few days. But it's amazing how this thing has risen at a relatively short amount of time on the site of the old Ryan Field. And I think fans coming in here, even though it's going to be a smaller stadium, it's going to be 35,000. But that's the trend now in the new stadiums. They are going to smaller and more fan amenities, and that's what it's going to be about.
Yeah, I can't wait to see it. So I know all of Northwestern's alum and fan base is excited too, so it's not going to be long now. But this Saturday, big game for both teams, and it should be a lot of fun in what I think is a cool setting at Wrigley. So with us today has been Dave Eanet, the radio play-by-play voice of Northwestern football. Always great to have you join us, Dave. We thank you and look forward to another visit soon.
This sounds good. Always good being with you, Mike.
On Quick Hits today, at his Monday presser, Sharon also mentioned that Hogan Hansen was close to being ready and Rod Moore was making progress. It does not sound like we'll see either of them this week, though. On Thursday's Michigan Game Day, we'll have any injury updates or team news made available during the week. Our guest will be beat writer Aaron McMahon from M Live. We'll also have the usual game day notes of interest and a look at the weather for Saturday's noon start time. So make sure you join us. That does it for now. Have a great Wolverine week, everyone. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. Until we meet again on Thursday, take care, and as always, go blue. Thanks for joining us today on The Michigan Man, here on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V Sporto Network, and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew. Our listener lines are open 24/7 for your calls at 313-263-4842. That's 313-263-4842. Or email us at themichiganmanpodcast@yahoo.com. That's themichiganmanpodcast@yahoo.com. The Michigan Man Podcast is produced at the studios of Robin Lynn Productions, Allen Park, Michigan, and is not affiliated with the University of Michigan. Go Blue!